In my family, legacy was everything, and that legacy was forged in steel and sweat at Hayes Manufacturing, the industrial parts company my grandfather started with a $5,000 loan and a whole lot of grit. My older brother, Mark, was born to inherit that legacy. He had the right last name, the right gender, and the right attitude allowed. Backslapping confidence that my father mistook for competence. Me, I was the afterthought. I was Anna, the one with the cute job in the fluffy, intangible world of technology, at my dad's retirement party, in front of everyone. He made it crystal clear that I wasn't part of the legacy he was so proud of. He had no idea that his entire legacy was about to become a very small and very interesting new line item in my corporate portfolio. If you've ever been the overlooked child, the one whose success didn't fit the family narrative, then you're my people. My father lived and breathed Hayes Manufacturing for 40 years. He was the CEO, a man who believed in the things you could build with your own two hands. He understood machinery, supply chains, and the power of a firm handshake. He did not understand, nor did he respect, my world. I was the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Acquisitions for Global Tech Solutions, one of the largest and most aggressive tech firms in the world. My job was abstract. I didn't make things you could hold. I acquired the companies that did. I lived in a world of data, of market analysis, of multi-hundred-million-dollar deals negotiated through a series of quiet, ruthless video calls across multiple time zones. When I tried to explain what I did to my father, his eyes would glaze over. Strategy and acquisitions, he'd say with a dismissive grunt. It all sounds like pretend work. At Hayes, we make real things. We make parts that build cities. What do you make? Anna PowerPoints. My brother, Mark, who was the VP of sales at my father's company, was always more direct with his condescension. So you basically just sit in meetings and use buzzwords like synergy and optimization all day. He'd sneer at our Sunday family dinners. Sounds rough. I spent the day on the factory floor. Real work. This had always been the dynamic. I have a vivid memory from when we were kids. Visiting the factory on a Saturday, my grandfather, a kind, wise man who saw the world with clearer eyes than his son ever did, was showing us around. He let Mark sit in his big chair in the CEO's office and told him, "One day, son, this will all be yours." Then he turned to me, a quiet, bookish girl who was more interested in the factory's accounting ledgers than the heavy machinery. He knelt and whispered, "He may be the king, Anna, but you, my dear, are the one who understands how the kingdom actually runs. Never forget that." My grandfather saw my strength. After he passed, my father and brother only ever saw my difference. Mark's business degree was celebrated with a lavish party. My dual degree in economics and computer science was met with a confused, "Well, I'm sure you'll find a nice, stable office job somewhere." I learned to stop talking about my work. I learned to just nod and smile when they bragged about landing a new contract, even if I knew the client was a bad credit risk. I learned to be the quiet, other daughter, the one with the pretend job in the pretend world of technology. It was easier than fighting. It was easier than enduring their blank, uncomprehending stares. The news of my father's retirement, after 40 years at the helm, was a momentous occasion for our family. A massive, lavish party was planned at the city's most exclusive country club. The event wasn't just a celebration of his career. It was an unofficial coronation for my brother. It was an open secret that Mark would be named the new CEO of Hayes Manufacturing. The passing of the torch, the continuation of the legacy. I was, of course, expected to be there, to smile and applaud and play my part as the proud, if slightly irrelevant, daughter and sister. I felt a familiar, weary sense of resignation. It would be another night of being a background character in my own family's story. Another night of listening to my father praise my brother's sharp business instincts, while completely ignoring the senior vice president of acquisitions sitting right at his table. I felt that old, familiar pang of hurt, the one that came from a lifetime of being underestimated. But as I RSVP'd to the party, I also felt something else, a quiet, simmering resolve. I was tired of being the afterthought. I was tired of letting them define my success, or lack thereof. I had no idea what was coming. I had no idea that a confidential file was about to cross my desk at Global Tech, a file that would give me the opportunity to redefine my place in my family's legacy forever. The surprise wasn't just for him, as it turned out. It was for me, too. The planning for my father's retirement party took over our family's life for the next 2 months. It was, as expected, a massive, lavish affair designed to celebrate his 40-year legacy. The guest list was a who's who of the regional manufacturing industry. The venue was the most exclusive country club in the state, and the entire event was being framed as the passing of the torch from my father, the king, to my brother, the crown prince. My role in all of this, I was the glorified event planner, the organized one. Anna, can you handle the RSVPs? You're so good with spreadsheets. My mother would say, Anna, can you coordinate with the caterer about the seating chart? You have such an eye for detail. My father would add, I was tasked with all the thankless, logistical grunt work, while being completely excluded from the parts that actually mattered. The breaking point for me came during a family meeting to plan the evening's speeches. Of course, Mark will give the main speech, my father announced, as if it were a foregone conclusion. He'll speak about my business legacy, about the future of Hayes Manufacturing. As the incoming CEO, it's his place. I'd like to say a few words, too, Dad, I said quietly. I'd like to talk about what it was like growing up with the company, what your work meant to me. My father looked at me, a baffled, almost pitying expression on his face. Anna, honey, he said with a small, condescending laugh. What would you even say? You don't know anything about the manufacturing world, about the challenges of running a real business. This is a night for people who understand the legacy. It's better if you just sit and enjoy the party. You can give a nice little toast to the family later, maybe after the cake. A nice little toast, after the cake. He was relegating me to the kiddie table, dismissing my voice as irrelevant in front of my entire family. The message was clear, my perspective, as the daughter who had chosen a different path. Was an embarrassment? It was not welcome on his stage. I didn't argue. I just nodded, a cold, quiet anger beginning to build inside me. The humiliation was a familiar, bitter taste in my mouth. The very next day, at my real job at Global Tech Solutions, a confidential file landed on my desk. It was a list of potential acquisition targets in the industrial manufacturing sector that my team was vetting for our portfolio. And as I scanned the list of names, my heart stopped. There it was, Hayes Manufacturing. I felt a dizzying wave of vertigo, my two worlds, which I had so carefully kept separate for so many years, were about to collide with the force of a tectonic event. I opened the internal analysis file, my hands trembling slightly, and I read, the report, compiled by my firm's ruthless M&A department, was a brutal, clinical autopsy of my family's company, declining profits for the last 5 years, failure to innovate or modernize, outdated management structure, overly reliant on legacy accounts, significant risk of insolvency within the next 24 months. It confirmed everything I had known, everything I had tried to warn them about. My father and brother, in their pride and their arrogance, were flying the company directly into the ground, and my firm, my massive, unsentimental tech firm, saw them as a wounded animal, a perfect target, a distressed asset ripe for a cheap, strategic acquisition. My first instinct was a surge of protective loyalty. This was my grandfather's company, my family's name. I should recuse myself, kill the deal, protect them. But then I thought of my father's condescending laugh. I thought of my brother's smug, dismissive smirk. I thought of them telling me I wouldn't know what to say about the business. They had kicked me out of their legacy. They had told me I had no place in it. Fine. A new, cold, and dangerously clear idea began to form in my mind. I didn't kill the deal, but I didn't approve it, either. I called the head of my M&A department. This Hayes Manufacturing deal, I said, my voice carefully neutral. It's interesting. I want to keep it on a quiet track for now. Proceed with the preliminary due diligence. But I want all reports to come directly to me. I'll be managing this one personally. For the next few weeks, I lived a surreal double life. In the evenings, I would be on the phone with my mother, listening to her gush about the retirement party. about the wonderful tribute Mark was planning to give. "It's all about honoring your father's legacy, you see," she would say, and during the day, I would be in my office, reading confidential reports that detailed the slow, steady decay of that very same legacy. I was watching my family plan a party, completely oblivious to the fact that their entire world was standing on the edge of a financial cliff. And I was the one who was quietly, secretly, deciding whether or not to give them a push. The night of the party finally arrived. I walked into the lavish country club ballroom, a place where my family had celebrated so many milestones. It was filled with their friends, their colleagues, the people who had watched me grow up. I played my part, I smiled, I made small talk. I was the perfect, supportive afterthought of a daughter. I watched my father, beaming, as he accepted congratulations from his peers. I watched my brother, Mark, preening, already acting like the CEO. They were so proud, so confident, so completely unaware that the loser daughter they had just dismissed was now in possession of enough information to completely destroy them. I stood at the back of the ballroom, a glass of champagne in my hand, and watched my father walk towards the stage to give his big speech, a speech I knew would be full of pride for his son and, most likely, a pitying, backhanded mention of me. I felt a strange sense of calm. The game was afoot, and they had no idea what a powerful, surprising hand I was about to play. My father took the stage at his retirement party to a standing ovation. He stood at the podium, basking in the warm glow of the spotlight, a king surveying his loyal subjects. He was in his element, a man at the peak of his perceived success, celebrating a 40-year career that he believed was a testament to his strength and business acumen. He looked out at the sea of faces, his colleagues, his friends, his family, and he began his grand, final speech. He was charming, I'll give him that. He told stories about the early days, about working alongside my grandfather. He thanked his business partners and his key employees, men who had been with him for decades. He thanked my mother for being his rock. It was a beautiful, heartfelt performance. Then he turned his attention to his children, to his legacy. "As I look to the future," he said, his voice swelling with pride, "I know that the company, the legacy my father built and that I have proudly carried, is in strong, capable hands." He beamed and pointed to my brother, Mark, who was sitting at the head table. "My son, Mark," he declared. "He has his grandfather's grit and my sharp instincts. He has worked his way up through this company. He knows it inside and out, and he is ready to lead. I am so incredibly proud to know that he will be the one to carry the Hayes name into the next generation." The room erupted in applause. Mark stood up and gave a small, confident bow, accepting the praise as his birthright. My father waited for the applause to die down, a proud, happy smile on his face. And then, his eyes scanned the room and landed on me. I was standing near the back, by the bar, watching the whole spectacle with a kind of detached, clinical interest. The smile on his face faltered slightly, replaced by an expression I knew all too well. It was a look of slight confusion, of paternal disappointment, the look he always got when he was forced to acknowledge the existence of his strange, incomprehensible, tech-world daughter. He cleared his throat, and he began, his voice now lacking the booming pride it held just moments before. "I have to say, I'm proud of my daughter, Anna, too." He paused, and in that pause, I felt the familiar, cold dread wash over me. I knew what was coming. A backhanded compliment, a subtle dismissal, a public pat on the head. He chuckled, a small, condescending sound. "She chose a very different path from the rest of us," he said to the crowd. "A creative path. She went off into that confusing world of computers and that whatever it is they do over there." A few of his older colleagues chuckled along with him. "But she seems happy," he said with a magnanimous shrug, as if my happiness were a strange and perplexing consolation prize. "She's happy with her little computer hobbies. And at the end of the day, a father can't ask for much more than that. Every family needs an artist, right?" He said it with a warm, folksy smile, and the crowd laughed politely, but the words, to me, were a public execution. A little computer hobby. I was a senior vice president at a global technology firm. I managed a portfolio of acquisitions worth over $1 billion. I had led teams that had developed some of the most innovative software on the market. And my own father, in front of 200 of his closest friends and colleagues, had just reduced my entire life's work, my entire professional identity, to a little computer hobby. It wasn't just an insult, it was an erasure. He was publicly, cheerfully, and completely invalidating my entire existence. I felt the blood rush to my face, a hot wave of pure, absolute humiliation. I could feel the pitying looks from the people around me. Oh, that's the other one, the strange one, the failure. In that moment, any lingering, foolish hope I had that he might one day see me, that he might one day understand and respect my world, just died. The internal conflict I had been wrestling with for weeks, the protective, daughterly instinct to save my family's company versus the cold, professional logic of a good business deal vanished. My father had just made the decision for me. He didn't see me as part of his legacy. He didn't see me as part of his world. Fine. Then I would no longer see his company as part of my family. It was just an asset, an underperforming, mismanaged, and deeply undervalued asset. An asset that I was in a unique position to acquire. He finished his speech to thunderous applause. He raised his glass high. To the future, he roared. To Hayes Manufacturing and to my son, Mark, the new man in charge. I stood at the back of the room, and I silently raised my own glass. A cold, quiet smile touched my lips. To the future, I thought to myself. My future. I pulled out my phone, my hands perfectly steady now. I opened a secure messaging app and found the name of the head of my M&A department, a ruthless genius named David Chen, the man who had been patiently waiting for my final decision on the Hayes Manufacturing deal. I typed out a short, simple, 2-word message. Greenlight it. I hit send. The surprise for my father was now officially in motion. He thought he had just passed the torch to his son. He had no idea he had just handed the entire goddamn stadium to his daughter. I sent the text, greenlight it, and then I calmly put my phone away. A strange sense of peace washed over me. The calm that comes after a declaration of war. The decision was made. The wheels were in motion. All I had to do now was watch the show. I stayed at the back of the ballroom, a ghost at my own family's feast, and I watched them. I watched my father accept congratulations, his chest puffed out with pride. I watched my brother, Mark, graciously accept handshakes and pats on the back, already behaving like the CEO he believed he was about to become. They were so confident, so secure in their own little world, completely oblivious to the corporate tidal wave that was, at that very moment, hurtling towards them from my office in another city. After my father's speech, the party continued. The band played, people danced, and I waited. About an hour later, after the dessert course had been served, my father took the stage again, a fresh glass of champagne in his hand. "All right, everyone, if I could have your attention one more time," he boomed, his voice slightly slurred from the evening's celebrations. "We have one more very special announcement to make tonight. It's about the future of Hayes Manufacturing." A hush fell over the room. I saw my brother Mark straighten his tie and give his wife a confident wink. This was it, his coronation. To make this special announcement, my father continued, beaming, "Please welcome to the stage the chairman of our board, and my dear friend for over 30 years, Mr. Bill Thompson." Bill Thompson, a kind, elderly man with a warm smile, walked onto the stage to a round of polite applause. He shook my father's hand. "Thank you, Arthur," Bill began, his voice warm and steady. "It has been an honor to serve on this board, and an even greater honor to call you my friend. Your 40 years of leadership have been a testament to the values your father instilled in this company's strength, integrity, and quality." He paused, his expression turning more serious. "But as we all know, the world is changing. The manufacturing landscape is not what it was 40 years ago. To survive, a company must be willing to adapt, to innovate, to embrace the future." My father and brother were nodding along, their faces glowing with pride, completely missing the undertone of what Bill was saying. They thought he was talking about them, about their strong leadership. "And so," Bill continued, to ensure that the legacy of Hayes Manufacturing not only survives, but thrives for the next 50 years. The board has recently, and unanimously, approved a bold new strategic direction for our future. Mark was practically vibrating in his seat, ready to be called up to the stage. "I am thrilled to announce," Bill said, his voice now booming with a genuine excitement, "that as of an agreement finalized late last night, Hayes Manufacturing has been acquired by one of the most innovative and powerful technology firms in the world, Global Tech Solutions." The name of my company dropped into the room like a bomb. The polite smiles on the faces of my father and brother froze, then completely collapsed. Acquired, sold. What was he talking about? The room erupted in a buzz of shocked, confused whispers. "This acquisition," Bill continued, his voice full of a genuine enthusiasm that I knew was a result of the incredibly generous offer my firm had made, "will provide Hayes Manufacturing with the capital, the technology, and the strategic vision to become a leader in 21st century industrial design. Our future has never been brighter. The legacy is secure." My father looked at Mark, his face a mask of utter bewilderment. Mark looked back, his own face pale with a dawning, panicked horror. His guaranteed ascension to the throne, his birthright, had just been sold out from under him, and he hadn't even been in the room when it happened. My father finally stumbled to the microphone. "Bill," he stammered, I don't understand. This is a surprise." "It is, Arthur." Bill said, clapping him on the back. "A wonderful surprise. The deal was negotiated with incredible speed and discretion. The leadership at Global Tech are true professionals." The crowd was still buzzing, a sea of confused but impressed faces. They knew Global Tech. Everyone knew Global Tech. It was a titan of industry. For a small, struggling, family-run company like Hayes Manufacturing to be acquired by them, it was a massive, stunning development. My father, ever the performer, began to recover. He could spin this. His company hadn't failed. It had been chosen. He was not a failure. He was the man who had built something so valuable that a giant like Global Tech wanted to buy it. He started to smile again, but Bill wasn't finished. "But that's not all," he said, holding up a hand to quiet the crowd. "There's one more piece of this exciting news." He looked out at the audience, a wide, genuine smile on his face. "The person from Global Tech who spearheaded this acquisition, the visionary who saw the hidden potential in our company and who fought for this deal, the executive who will be leading this new, integrated division, is someone who knows this company and this family very, very well." My heart began to pound, a slow, steady rhythm. This was my little surprise. "In fact," Bill said, his eyes scanning the room, "she's here with us tonight." He looked past the head table, past the front rows, his gaze moving toward the back of the ballroom where I was standing, half hidden in the shadows. His eyes found mine. He smiled. My family, my father, my mother, my brother, all followed his gaze, and I watched as their faces, one by one, transformed. The confusion, the shock, the dawning pride my father had been trying to assemble, it all melted away, replaced by a single, unified expression of pure, unadulterated, slack-jawed horror. The loser, the afterthought, the girl with the little computer hobby. They finally saw me. The silence in the grand ballroom was absolute. The chairman of the board, Bill Thompson, had just announced that the person who had orchestrated the acquisition of Hayes Manufacturing was in the room, and he was looking directly at me. Every head in the room turned, a sea of 200 confused, curious faces, all swiveling to the back of the room, to the awkward corner where I, the afterthought, had been standing. I could see the confusion on their faces. "That's just the daughter," their expressions seemed to say, "the one with the hobby." My family's faces were a different story. They weren't confused. They were horrified. The blood drained from my father's face. My brother Mark looked like he was going to be physically ill. They knew, in that single, terrible, heart-stopping moment. They finally understood. Bill Thompson's voice boomed from the stage, full of a genuine, cheerful pride. "The new senior vice president of the Hayes Manufacturing Division of Global Tech Solutions. My new boss is Anna Hayes. Anna, would you please come up and say a few words?" Time seemed to slow down. The quiet, overlooked daughter was being called to the stage. I took a breath. smoothed down the front of my simple dress, and I began to walk. It was the longest and most satisfying walk of my life. It was a victory lap. I walked through the parted sea of my father's friends and colleagues. I could hear their shocked whispers as I passed. That's his daughter, the one who works in tech. I didn't know she was with Global Tech. I walked right past my family's table at the front. I didn't look at my mother, but I could feel her stunned gaze on me. I did, however, look at my father. His face was a mask of utter, abject shock, his mouth slightly agape, and I looked at my brother, Mark. The smug, condescending smirk he had worn his entire life was gone, replaced by a look of pure, terrified disbelief. He looked at me as if I were a ghost, an avenging angel, a creature from another planet. He was finally seeing me, for the very first time. I reached the stage, walked up the small set of stairs, and shook Bill Thompson's hand. He squeezed my hand warmly and gave me a proud, fatherly wink that my own father had never given me. Then, he handed me the microphone and stepped back. I stood at the podium, looking out at the silent, stunned room. I looked at my family, and then I began to speak. My voice was calm, clear, and steady. "Good evening," I began. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anna Hayes." I looked directly at my father. My dad, in his very moving speech earlier, described my career as a little computer hobby. And in a way, he wasn't entirely wrong. It did start as a hobby, a passion, a love for technology and for building new things. A passion that some people in my life encouraged me to abandon in favor of a more traditional path. My gaze flickered to my brother, but I was stubborn, and over the past 15 years, that hobby grew. It grew into a career, and that career grew into a position as Senior Vice President of Strategy and Acquisitions at one of the largest technology firms in the world. A new wave of murmurs went through the crowd. I let the title hang in the air for a moment. Senior Vice President, not an administrative assistant, not a hobbyist. And in my position at Global Tech, I continued, my voice now full of a quiet, unshakable authority. I have learned that a company's legacy isn't just about what it built in the past. It's about what it is building for the future. I have watched Hayes Manufacturing, the company my grandfather built, struggle for years. I have watched it fail to innovate, fail to adapt, and fail to see the future. I have watched it slowly, painfully, begin to die. I looked at my father and brother again. My father and my brother see my ideas, my world of technology and innovation, as a threat to their legacy. I see it as the only thing that can save it. This acquisition, I said to the room, is not a hostile takeover. It is a rescue mission. A mission to take the integrity and quality that my grandfather built this company on and bring it into the 21st century. To honor his legacy not by letting it become a museum piece, but by making it strong and modern and profitable again. That is my vision. I paused. And then I looked directly at my brother, my voice turning crisp and professional. The voice of a boss. My first act as the new head of this division will be to meet with the senior management team tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp to discuss our new path forward. Mark, I said, my gaze unwavering. I trust you will be there. I finished my speech. For a moment, there was just stunned silence. And then, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't the polite, obligatory applause my father had received. It was a genuine, thunderous roar of approval from the business community in the room, from the people who recognized a real leader, a real vision, when they saw one. I looked at my family's table. They were not applauding. They were just sitting there, completely broken. In the wreckage of their own world, the other daughter, the afterthought, the girl with the cute little hobby, had just become the most powerful person in their universe. My little surprise was complete. The thunderous applause that followed my short, sharp speech eventually died down, replaced by a thick, awkward silence. The party was over. The guests, unsure of the etiquette for when a daughter publicly and professionally dismantles her own family, began to make hasty, quiet exits. They would offer me a wide-eyed, respectful nod as they passed, pointedly avoiding my father and brother's table. I watched as my family, the trio of stunned, pale-faced statues, finally moved. They didn't speak to me. They couldn't. What was there to say? They gathered their coats, and without another word, walked out of the ballroom. A royal family who had just been publicly overthrown in a swift and brutal coup. I didn't feel a surge of triumph as they left. I just felt a quiet, profound sense of finality. The war was over, and I had won. The next morning, at 8 a.m. sharp, I walked into the main boardroom at Hayes Manufacturing. It was the same room where my ideas had been dismissed, where I had been told I was too emotional for business. But today, I wasn't a guest. I sat down in the large leather chair at the head of the table, my father's chair, and waited. My father and my brother, Mark, walked in at 8:05. They looked like they hadn't slept. Their usual arrogance and confidence were gone, replaced by a weary, humbled apprehension. They didn't sit down, they just stood there, waiting for me to speak. They were no longer the CEO and the heir apparent. They were two senior employees, reporting for duty to their new boss. The power shift was absolute and palpable. I didn't gloat, I didn't bring up the party. My professionalism was my greatest weapon. "Good morning," I began, my voice crisp and clear. "Thank you for being here. Let's begin." For the next hour, I ran the meeting with a cool, calm efficiency that I knew was terrifying to them. I laid out my new vision for the company, the very same vision they had rejected just a few weeks ago. I detailed the immediate new investments in technology, the complete overhaul of our outdated marketing strategy, and the launch plan for the Urban Oak collection. They just listened, their faces pale. Finally, I got to the last item on the agenda. The restructuring, I said. As of today, the company will have a new management structure. I looked at my father. "Dad," I said, my voice softening just a fraction, but still firm. "Your 40 years of experience on the factory floor, your knowledge of the craft, is invaluable to this company, but your time as an executive is over. I am appointing you as the senior advisor for production quality. You will report directly to me. Your job is to ensure that the quality my grandfather built this company on is never compromised as we modernize. It's an essential role." It was a respectful role, a role that honored his true skills. But it was also a complete stripping of his executive power. He was no longer the king. He was now a member of my court. He just nodded, his eyes downcast. Then, I turned to my brother. "Mark," I said, my voice now losing all of its warmth, "your performance as vice president of sales has been, to put it mildly, underwhelming. Your strategy has been lazy, and your results have been poor. However," I paused, "I believe in second chances, under new leadership." I looked him right in the eye. "You are being reassigned. You are now the regional sales manager for the Midwest territory. You will report to the new national sales director, a woman I am hiring from outside the company, who starts next month. This is your chance, Mark, to prove you can actually sell something. Instead of just inheriting a title, I expect to see your first quarterly sales plan on my desk by Friday." It was a clear, brutal, and undeniable demotion. He was no longer the crown prince. He was now a mid-level manager with a new boss to answer to, a boss who happened to be his little sister. The look on his face was a beautiful mixture of impotent rage and utter defeat. But he, like my father, just nodded. They had no other choice. "Excellent," I said, closing my portfolio. "The meeting is adjourned. I have work to do." I stood up and walked out of the boardroom, leaving them sitting there, two men who had just been completely and totally outmaneuvered by the hobbyist daughter they had so foolishly underestimated. The year that followed was a whirlwind, under my leadership, and with the infusion of capital and technology from Global Tech, Hayes Manufacturing, now rebranded as Hayes & Co., for a modern, sleeker feel, was reborn. The Urban Oak collection was a massive success, and the company became profitable for the first time in a decade. My relationship with my family is a work in progress. It's strained, and it's awkward, but it's more honest than it has ever been. My father, in his new role, has rediscovered his love for the craft itself. Freed from the pressures of being a CEO he was no longer suited to be. He's happier than I've seen him in years. My brother, Mark, humbled and stripped of his entitlement, is actually a surprisingly good salesman now that he has to work for it. They treat me with a new, quiet, and sometimes fearful respect. They no longer see me as the afterthought. They see me as their boss. My father humiliated me at his retirement party because he couldn't see my strength, because my success didn't fit into his narrow, outdated roadmap. So I had to buy his company to save his legacy. And in the process, I created my own. They thought I wasn't part of the family business. It turns out I am the family business, and I have never, ever looked back.